party started as a celebration, a joyous way to ring in the new year with friends. My girlfriend Lila and I spent the entire day preparing our condo. Streamers, balloons, and fairy lights transformed our modest space into a festive retreat. 30 guests were invited, and we expected laughter, music, and good vibes to carry us into midnight. Still, we couldn't ignore a lingering sense of caution. Our home wasn't large, but it was filled with sentimental and valuable items. To keep an eye on things, we discreetly set up small surveillance cameras in the living room and bedroom. It felt like a smart precaution. As the guests trickled in, we found ourselves caught up in the chaos of hosting, grabbing coats, serving drinks, making everyone feel welcome. But even early on, strange things began happening. The TV remote, which had been on the coffee table moments earlier, vanished, only to reappear right where it had been. Lila's phone charger disappeared next, only to resurface in the kitchen. We chalked it up to the hustle of the evening. People were everywhere. Things could easily get misplaced. Around 9 o'clock, I noticed a man I didn't recognize. He stood by the corner of the living room, wearing a long black trench coat that seemed out of place among the casual partygoers. He was tall, his face pale and gaunt, and though his eyes seemed to scan the room, they never truly landed on anyone. When I asked my friend Micah about him, Micah waved it off. "He's with one of my co-workers," he said. That explanation was enough for me, for the moment. But as the night wore on, the man's presence grew more unsettling. He didn't mingle or speak to anyone. Instead, he lingered on the periphery, watching but never engaging. At one point, Lila whispered to me, "He's been in the bathroom for ages. People are complaining." I knocked on the door and called out, but there was no response. Just as I considered forcing it open, the lock clicked, and he emerged, his expression unreadable. He didn't apologize or explain. He simply brushed past me and disappeared into the crowd again. By midnight, the party was winding down. The countdown came and went, and guests began to leave. Lila and I exchanged tired but happy smiles as we surveyed the aftermath. Empty cups, plates stacked on the counter, and confetti scattered everywhere. It was only after everyone had gone that the mood shifted. "Where's my bag?" Lila asked. Her voice carried an edge of panic. We searched everywhere, overturning cushions, looking under tables, and even checking in the kitchen. Her bag, a gift from her late grandmother, was gone. So was my watch, an heirloom that had belonged to my father. My chest tightened. The cameras. We had set up cameras. We hurried to the bedroom where our laptop was connected to the surveillance feed. The footage played back in eerie silence. At first, everything appeared normal. Guests laughing, moving about, enjoying themselves. But then, the man in the trench coat appeared on screen. We watched as he moved deliberately, his hands rifling through drawers, his movements quick and precise. My stomach dropped when he began throwing small items out of the bedroom window. Then came the moment that stole the air from my lungs. The man walked to the bed, crouched down, and crawled underneath it. Lila's hand gripped my arm, her nails digging into my skin. The footage showed guests still moving around the condo, completely unaware of the intruder hiding mere feet from where we now sat. I couldn't breathe. He never came out, I whispered. Lila's eyes widened with horror as we both realized what that meant. We were sitting on the bed he had crawled under. Heart pounding, I gestured for Lila to grab a kitchen knife. She moved quietly, her breaths shallow. We retreated to the living room, knives in hand, and called the police, whispering into the phone. Every second felt like an eternity. We kept our eyes fixed on the bedroom door, half expecting it to creak open, revealing the pale, gaunt face of the trenchcoat man. When the police arrived, they searched every inch of the condo. Under the bed, they found nothing but an open window and scuff marks on the floor. He had escaped. The officers took our statement and the surveillance footage, assuring us they would investigate. But the man was never identified, never caught. For weeks, Lila and I couldn't sleep in the bedroom. Every creak, every shadow set our nerves on edge. Even now, the memory lingers. The horrifying thought that for hours, while we laughed, celebrated, and rang in the new year, someone had been hiding in our most private space, watching and waiting. We don't host parties anymore. And every New Year's Eve, we sit together, doors locked, cameras watching, wondering if he's still out there. That New Year's Eve during my college years still haunts me. I was back home for winter break, reconnecting with my best friends, Vinny and Jake. The three of us were inseparable back then, and we wanted to send off the year in style. Vinny, always the smooth talker, had been chatting up a girl on Tinder named Clara. She'd invited him to a party and told him to bring friends. It sounded perfect. Free drinks, new faces, and the kind of adventure we thrived on. We pre-gamed hard at Jake's place, laughing and hyping ourselves up for the night ahead. By the time the Uber arrived, we were tipsy but buzzing with excitement. The address Clara gave us wasn't far, so we figured it was legit. But as the car rolled up to this storage-like building on the edge of town, our excitement began to wane. The place was weird, too quiet, too isolated. The building was long and rectangular, with dark windows that reflected nothing but the streetlights. "This doesn't look like a party," Jake muttered, his voice uneasy. Vinny waved off our concerns. "It's fine. She said it's low-key. Trust me." A tall, broad-shouldered man stood by the entrance, his face half hidden in shadows. He didn't say much, just gestured us inside with a jerk of his head. The three of us exchanged nervous glances, but none of us wanted to be the one to back out. Peer pressure and liquid courage carried us through those doors. Inside, it was dimly lit, with only a few strings of weak, flickering lights casting a sickly glow over the room. About 20 or 30 people were scattered around, mostly in small, tight groups. They weren't mingling, weren't talking, just standing or sitting silently, sipping drinks and glancing around like they were waiting for something. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on my chest. Something was off, but none of us could quite put it into words. "Where are the women?" Jake whispered, his voice sharp with confusion. There weren't any. Every single person there was a man, and most of them looked older than us by a good decade. The whole scene felt wrong. I could see it on Jake's face, and even Vinny, ever the optimist, looked uneasy as he typed out a quick text to Clara. "She says she's in the back," Vinny announced, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "Let's go find her." We weaved through the room, every step making my skin crawl. The way the others looked at us, cold, calculating, set off alarm bells in my head. No one smiled, no one said hello. They just stared, their eyes tracking us like predators sizing up prey. The back section was separated by a hallway lined with closed doors. The dim lighting here was even worse, casting long, unsettling shadows. We were halfway down when a man emerged from one of the doors, his face pale and drawn. He leaned close to Vinny and whispered, "Get out of here. Now midnight. You don't want to be here for it." The man's tone was sharp, urgent, and completely devoid of humor. Vinny froze, his face going pale. Jake and I didn't need convincing. "Let's go," Jake said, his voice trembling. We turned on our heels, adrenaline kicking in as we hurried back the way we came. That's when I noticed it. Footsteps behind us, faint but unmistakable. I didn't dare look back, but the growing sense of being followed turned my stomach. We burst into the main room, moving as fast as we could without outright sprinting. The others were watching us now, their heads turning in unison as we passed. It felt like we were walking through a gauntlet of silent, staring figures. The tall man at the door was still there, his face unreadable as we rushed past him into the cold night air. We didn't stop running until we hit the street and spotted our Uber waiting where we'd left it. We piled in, shouting at the driver to go, go, go. The car sped off, leaving that cursed building behind. Once we were safe, the reality of what had just happened hit us. Vinny checked his phone. Clara's profile was gone. No trace of her anywhere. The realization was chilling. She probably wasn't real. Someone had lured us there, and whatever they had planned for midnight, we didn't want to know. We reported the place to the police anonymously, but we never found out what came of it. That night, we stayed up until dawn, huddled in Jake's living room, too shaken to sleep. To this day, I can't celebrate New Year's without thinking about that night and wondering what would have happened if we hadn't listened to that stranger's warning.